Hey everyone, welcome back. This is the second video that I've done, second or third video, but it's been quite a bit of time between the previous video and this video. But today I wanted to talk to you about my previous experience of moving from San Francisco to Shanghai. Now that I've been here 2 years, reflect a little bit on my time and also provide some perspective to hopefully help you make a similar decision if you're on the cusp of deciding, should I go live somewhere else? Before we get started, I want to provide a little bit of background on myself and kind of where I started. Maybe this is where you are right now. So about 2 years ago, almost to today, because it was in June 2018. Today is June 2020. So June 2018, I was in San Francisco and I had to decide. I had to decide between moving, jumping, taking the risk, moving to Shanghai, or continuing my life in San Francisco. And rewinding back even further, I graduated from UC Berkeley in 2010. So in June of 2018, it had been 8.5 years, eight and a half years of me living in San Francisco after college. And actually before that, growing up, I was actually born in San Francisco. So my whole life I had spent in the Bay Area. And after college, I had spent 8.5 years chasing my dreams, doing the whole Silicon Valley startup thing, which was amazing. I met amazing people, built some companies with friends, raised some venture capital, learned a ton. I wouldn't trade that experience for the world. But in June 2018, it was 8.5 years of that. And I had to ask myself the question, I had to reflect on the time that I had spent. I don't want to be too dramatic, but the time that I had spent on this earth, right? Not only those 8.5 years, but I don't want to date myself, but the 28, 27 years on this world that I had spent and look at kind of where I had deficiencies, what I hadn't experienced yet in life, and what I had experienced in life, what I had focused on, what part of me that I had fulfilled, right? And when you live the entrepreneur life, it's not a balanced life. I think for me, I've never been someone that's been able to have a very balanced life because my interests are very focused and I'm the obsessive type. Like if I want to get into something, I will dive so deep into something, right? And I enjoy it. That's where I find my confidence, my level of competence in something, and that's just how my brain works. I am good at a number of things, but when I really get into a hobby or a startup idea or anything, I devote all my time, all my energy, my soul into that. And so I hadn't been living a very balanced life. And so when I in June 2018, the decision that I had to make was how do I want to spend the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years of my life, right? And over the last 8.5 years for my career, I had done a lot. I had built a lot of software, built companies, raised money. I had learned a ton, but I had neglected so much of other really important things too. For those 8.5 years when I was working, I spent very little time with my friends. I spent time with family because I was still staying at home to save money. Luckily my parents live in San Francisco, and with the cost of housing in San Francisco and balanced with how much time I spent in the office anyways, it made sense for me to stay at home. But it had meant that I didn't really live totally independently, right? I was always close enough to my parents, and I was never thrown into a totally new environment where I had to survive on my own. Not only that, but Silicon Valley, for all its amazing things, I'm not bashing Silicon Valley, but it is a little bit of a bubble. Everyone thinks kind of the same way. In this cool, chase your dreams, anything is possible way, but still in a homogenous way if you look at it, with a backdrop of the diversity that the world offers. So San Francisco, Silicon Valley in the United States is one time and place. And what I really wanted to do, and I could feel it, I felt it for, not just on June 2018, but I felt it for a couple of years, was I wanted to see what else was out there. I wanted to see what else the world had to offer. And I wanted to take care of some of the things that I had neglected. I wanted to build more of a social life. I wanted to start over in a new place and see if I could make it. And Shanghai was the opportunity that came around that gave me that chance. So I remember June 2018, I was deciding between staying in San Francisco, taking a job at a later startup, because the startup that I had just been working on, Whale, was a failure. You know, we learned a ton, but at the end of the day, we had to close down that business, which is very common. You know, nothing out of the ordinary there. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. I had an amazing time there, but it was time to move on. And so I was deciding, you know, do I want to go to this later startup, stay in San Francisco, go down kind of the career path that I had kind of never wanted to do, because I've always been a little bit rebellious. I've always wanted to trailblaze and do my own startup. I didn't want to join a later startup, and I definitely didn't want to join like a corporate company. So I was deciding between, you know, a job at a later startup, or coming to Shanghai, joining my friend on a different startup that we would work on together, that we would build side by side. That was actually a little bit further along as well, but not to the same level as this other company in San Francisco. So those are the two choices that I was deciding between. Obviously, I chose Shanghai, but at the time I wasn't sure. You know, I wasn't sure because there are very few places in the world that can compare to Silicon Valley in terms of you know, what it has to offer in terms of career, in terms of being around amazing startup people that want to change the world. And also, to be honest, being around a place that's familiar, a place that I knew, a place where you know, there wasn't a lot of uncertainty. And to me, you know, for whatever reason, that safety that I felt being in San Francisco is actually one of the exact reasons why I felt like I had to leave. For whatever reason, I kind of abhor safety. Like, I don't like the feeling of safety, the feeling of predictability. I don't think that this is unique. I think if you're young, you've probably felt this yourself. You know, you've probably wanted to go on an adventure, go travel here, go travel there, live somewhere for a couple of years. And to that point, till June 2018, I hadn't really done that. I had denied myself that exploratory phase because I deferred it. You know, I wanted to go after my career, and I did that for 8.5 years, but I had deferred so many things. So when Shanghai came up, you know, I was still unsure. There was still a lot of things in my mind where I was, you know, not sure if it was the right time, it was the right opportunity. I was a little bit scared. But at the same time, what I feared more than the uncertainty of Shanghai was the certainty of San Francisco. I just didn't want to, you know, to be able to so easily predict the years that were to come. And I didn't want to miss out on everything that the world had to offer. So I made the leap. You know, in June 2018, I took a flight out to Shanghai. I met my friend who I had known from my previous startup. We had worked together for about a year, got along really well, but I had to meet the rest of the team and experience a little bit of Shanghai and see if this was a move that I wanted to make, if I would be happy doing this. And with every ounce of my being, I know that's like a trite phrase, but there was almost never a doubt in my mind that this was the right thing for me to do. It felt like if I didn't do it now, I would never do it. And the thought of not doing it was so repulsive to me that Shanghai was really a no-brainer. So I flew back to San Francisco. I flew to Shanghai, stayed about a couple days, 3 or 4 days, flew back to San Francisco, basically, you know, stayed there a week, said goodbye to my friends, to my family, packed my bags, and moved to Shanghai. Now it's been 2 years in Shanghai. So, you know, I want to encourage you, if you are someone that's in a similar situation and you can make this move in a responsible way. So I want to talk a little bit about how you can be responsible. But if you're thinking about making this move and you can do it responsibly, right, I think you should do it. There's so much to be gained by changing your perspective, by seeing how another society, another government, another culture works. These are all things that they're hard to calculate monetarily, right? But I think for the richness of your life, of your life experience, it's so important. I don't want to speak poorly of my friends and acquaintances in the Bay Area, but I go back and I get this weird feeling whenever I go back to San Francisco. So I go back, to the U.S. maybe once a quarter on business, on travel, to see family, and I'll reconnect with my friends. And they've kind of had a similar life path as me. The Silicon Valley software engineering route is it's a lucrative path. It's a blessed path in a lot of ways, but it's also quite a predictable path. And I see them, and they are making great progress financially, right? They have a car, maybe they're buying their first property. But when I talk to them, I feel like something is missing. I feel like that sense of adventure, living a little bit on the edge of what's unknown and continually rediscovering your boundaries doesn't really happen for them as much. And everyone's taste is different. It's for different people. But I would encourage you, if you ever feel that way at all, if you ever feel like your box is in a little bit claustrophobic, I would so much encourage you to go and scratch that itch, to go and explore. Take a trip to Cambodia or Vietnam or Thailand. Go there, experience it, spend a couple weeks there on vacation if you can afford it, or do something more long-term, do a more drastic change and actually move to a new country. For me, it's been amazing and one of the best, if not the best experience in my life by doing that. I feel like my life is so much richer from this experience, actually. So I've set up the background on kind of the decision that I had to make and why I moved here. But I do want to stress that you want to make this decision in a responsible way, in the best way, to ensure that when you come to a new country, you have a job lined up, you have a place to go, maybe one or two friends that and it depends on your personality. For me, I've been fairly independent. I'm a little bit of a recluse when I get into working anyways, so I'm pretty comfortable being alone. But having a business or a company here that is ready to hire you, that is also going to help walk you through the process of setting up life here, is also incredibly invaluable and something that I really appreciate from my friends here who did that for me. So I would encourage you, if you want to move somewhere long term, if you want to become an expat, there's a lot of different ways to do that. But I recommend saving some money so that when you come here, if things don't work out with your job, you can afford to live for a couple months, right? Give yourself a little bit of breathing room. The other thing is, if you can, and you should, I really highly recommend this, is talk to a company and see if they will transition you. If you're already working at a place, see if they have a job opportunity in China. I know for a lot of tech companies, this is something that is possible. They offer positions in other parts of the world, maybe Beijing, maybe Shanghai, maybe another foreign country. That's also a pretty safe route. That's going to give you a simple way to move somewhere else and give you that financial security where you don't have to juggle too many uncertainties at once. I think if I were to move to Shanghai and I had to look for a job or start a startup or do all of these things at once, that could be quite overwhelming. So, it depends on your risk tolerance, on how adventurous and creative and, how much drive you have. But I think if you want to go for, to basically get all your ducks in a row, to line things up so that when you move here, things are easy to transition to, look for that route, look for that corporate route, or apply for a job here while you're abroad. Do some job interviews, take some video calls, get something lined up so when you move to China, when you move to another country, you have your first at least couple months lined up in terms of housing, in terms of income, in terms of how you're going to get your visa to stay here. I think that's a great way to get started, and that's definitely the approach that I would recommend to anyone looking to do the same thing. Don't just pack up your bags with no money saved and fly somewhere. I think although that will work for a lot of people, that's probably putting in a little bit more risk than you need to. I would rather stay in San Francisco maybe 1, 2, 3, maybe 6 more months, maybe even a year longer, but plan for that eventual move somewhere else. But like everything, you shouldn't let your fear paralyze you. So I think for sure there is a smarter, a more mediated, a more planned approach to moving abroad. Less impulsive way of doing it, a safer way of doing it. And if you can, you should do that. But if you can't, or this all seems very daunting to you, you shouldn't let that get in the way of making that big life change. Because as an optimist, and I am an optimist, I think, if you are someone that is capable, and you don't mind, taking maybe 1 or 2 steps back for the potential for a better life in the future, it's okay to take that risk and move somewhere, even before maybe you have all these things lined up. But I think that you have to be a realist about that and try and do it in a smarter way. But if you can't, or it's daunting to you, don't let that stop you. Because I think there's so much fear about the unknown, fear of moving somewhere totally new. But if you go through it one step at a time, you'll find that most people can make this move. It's not really, it's scary, but it's not impossible. And I think the danger is you talk yourself out of something that you really need. This change of perspective, this richer life. I would be very careful of talking yourself out of this. It's easy to stay in place, right? It's like inertia. So you want to get that inertia going. You want to set a goal for when you want to go live somewhere else, what time frame you want to do that in. Send out some job applications, save some money, have that timeline set up so you have inertia going forward. Don't let that inertia stop and prevent you from exploring more. I have a lot of friends that say like, oh, I wish I had gone and done this, or I wish I had had that opportunity to go live there. And a lot of them, they end up not doing it. It's been 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Pretty soon it's 5 or 10 years. And some of those desires or wishes, those bucket list items that they've always wanted to do, they put off. And they put it off indefinitely, which is, can happen to anyone. So I will go more in depth in my future videos talking about how you plan for this type of move, things to expect here, and my specific experience of living in Shanghai. But in this video, I really just want to encourage you to make that commitment to yourself, to change, to move somewhere else if that's what you really want. If you've always felt like that, if this is a feeling that is recurring to you, that you've come to time and time again, that you want to live somewhere else, set that goal this year or next year. And don't just set that goal, but take the small steps that you need to do it in a smart, planned, practical way. Save money, apply for jobs, talk to your manager, and see if there's an opportunity to transition. Get your foot in the door and start that process, and don't put it off. So if there's any one message that I can give to you, is to encourage you to take that first step and do something for yourself. Start on this journey. So really quickly, if I want to look back on the 2 years that I've spent in Shanghai, what has been my experience? What have I learned? And I'm going to go into this more in depth in future videos. But broadly, the last 2 years in Shanghai have been amazing. They've been remarkable. The 2 years that I've spent here feel so much more than 2 years in San Francisco. When I look back at my life, there are certain periods when I was working on certain things, certain companies, and time moves at a different perceived rate, right? I'm sure you've all experienced this. Sometimes, a week, 2 weeks, they take forever to pass. And sometimes those 2 weeks, they go by in a blink of an eye. Example, with COVID-19 and the virus going on this year, it's now June of this year, but the first half of this year kind of went by in a blink of an eye, and I think that's because there's been so much homogeneity in my life, right? When you're quarantined, when all you can do is wake up, go to work, watch some YouTube videos, go to sleep, there's not enough variety. Your brain and your mind is not growing. It's not being given opportunity, fodder to improve itself or to expand its bounds. And so that time passes by, and you barely notice that the time passed. And it's not necessarily time that you savor as much. But in Shanghai, if I think about the last 2 years, I can't believe that it's already been 2 years. I mean, so much has happened. There have been so many adventures, so many good memories. I think for me, putting myself in this new environment where I didn't have a ton of friends before, where all these restaurants, all these places, all these bars are totally new to me, everything became an adventure. Everything became a special experience, and I enjoyed that process of discovering the culture here, making new friends, building bridges, so much more, and that has added in 2 years so much richness to my life that I otherwise wouldn't have had. And I'm really looking forward to spending even more time in Shanghai, or seeing what else life where else life takes me. I'm committed to having a rich life of experiencing more. And I think that Shanghai was a great way to get that started. I'm someone that does believe that life should be savored, and that's really hard to keep in mind sometimes, right? So much stuff happens, you get so busy. Sometimes you just want to make it to the next day if things get tough, at home or with your business. But it's important to remember that life should be savored, right? Every hour of your life, it's finite. You don't live forever, and it's important to make the most of your years while you can. And although I'm someone for meditation and getting yourself in the right mindset to enjoy every day and take advantage of every day, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you need that pattern interrupt of living somewhere else to re-spark that energy, that sense of adventure that you need to savor life again. It's kind of like dinner or food, right? Maybe you have a favorite dish, macaroni and cheese. The first 10 times you have it, you love it. But the 100th time that you have it, the 500th time you've had it, it's hard. It gets harder and harder to savor that and to find something new and different for your mind. And that's, psychological as well as physical it's not just psychological, it's physiological, right? It's like your brain's neurons are firing along the same paths. It's not really growing and building new connections. Sometimes you need to have that pattern interrupt, to live somewhere else, to subject yourself to new stimuli so that you're learning something new and making new connections and growing and expanding your mind. At least that's what I feel, and something that I'm so thankful for in Shanghai. So I really encourage all of you to make this move if you were thinking about it. If you're scared, do the planning work, do it in a smart way. But please don't deny yourself this opportunity to experience everything that this world, everything that life has to offer to you.